Aside from containing what is, in my opinion, one of the hardest starts in Godherja as these low-born, no-house ritualist remnants of yesteryear, the Pirate Coast is home to some of the mod's most interesting ritualist lore outside of the millennia-spanning War in Heaven, which we've discussed in our Ward Night videos before. Pirate Coast, a sprawling archipelago of tropical islands, stretches from the Horn of Ceridon to southern Kashyria and has, for most of its history, been a land of pirates and trade kingdoms, fought over bitterly for its ability to control the flow of trade from west to east and as a convenient spot to waylay such shipments, hence the name. The earliest settlers of this region worth mentioning are the Ritualists, who became sea kings in the area following their migration, or rather expulsion from Kashyria in the 4th century IS after Odached's incursions in and subsequent conquest of their former homeland. I've talked about Odached before on the channel as well, so if you're unfamiliar with his story and empire, go check out that video. For about 200 years, the Ritualists ruled the region as secular kings, attacking and taking each other's land as the mood struck, primarily with the help of spotted sharks used as mounts called morkati. But by the early 6th century IS, the War in Heaven had rapidly grown in hostility, and many ritualist traders, exiles, and seafarers sought to escape Ceridon. These nationless peoples found themselves migrating to the Pirate Coast and establishing a city-state there, which they named Ufaliracci. Thanks in part to their collective identity, what began as a ritualist city-state gradually grew to dominate the Pirate Coast, establishing a powerful kingdom which would rule for roughly 500 years. Over many years, ritualist nobles built their wealth with trade in spice and exotic goods until eventually they controlled nearly all trade in the region between nations. The Ufaliracci kingdom, a land of decadence and extravagance, was known to take on many debts for the sake of appearances as its power waned from its overindulgent nature, building massive and impressive structures and throwing lavish festivals or commemorating monuments to their wealth and power. Their decline officially began in the 9th century IS when a series of cataclysms and political upheavals known as Chan Scorpokapis began to unfold to the north in Kashyria. This, coupled with the rise of competing trade nations, which I will discuss momentarily, signaled the end of their control in the region in the early 11th century. As for those aforementioned three competing entities, they were the cinnamon cities who Ufaliracci initially controlled but ultimately became independent, were a coalition of rich merchant cities who would come to dominate the region after the fall of Ufaliracci for roughly 200 years until a series of rebellions and slave revolts followed by Frodbrokna ultimately destroyed them. The Gavin coalition, a short-lived but powerful pirate armada led by Captain Gavin Iron Eye, who amassed a fleet of 90 ships and 8,000 pirates. Their brutal raids and tolls crippled Ufaliracci's trade lanes for roughly 10 years before they ultimately sacked the capital city, which I'll talk about shortly. In the city of Magala-Quade, which is a metropolis on the tip of the Horn of Ceridon built on many stilts with the aid of long-legged spider crabs to avoid the rapidly moving tides. It is one of the most prosperous ports in the Pirate Coast, often called the capital of Dai. They played less of a direct part in the fall of Ufaliracci, but contributed to the decline in their trade importance. Now, by the early 11th century IS, Ufaliracci had lost all but its capital city to decay, greed, and incompetence, basically reverting back to a city-state. The Gavin coalition, at the height of their own power now, saw this weakness and aimed at sacking the city, stripping it of what little riches it had left. Well, a lot of riches, but we'll get to that. The Blood-Silver Assault of 1010 IS, as the siege is now known, was led by Captain Gavin Iron Eye, whose forces surrounded the city with their sights set on its magnificent silver palace, a veritable monument of wealth and extravagance in the region that took 10 years alone to complete. Ufaliracci's walls, famous for their strength, held for 48 days until Iron Eye cracked the very earth below with magic, bringing them to the ground, and with his remaining raiders plundered the city. Though resistance within the walls was fierce and many of the pirates died, over 2 days they ravaged the streets until they reached the palace itself. By the 50th day, Iron Eye's fleet of 8,000 numbered in dozens, and as the royal family and the last of their guard armed themselves, the two forces clashed, with the royal family and Iron Eye falling in the conflict. The remaining pirates gutted the Silver Palace, leaving it a husk atop its once gilded hill before turning on each other, splintering the Gavin coalition and leaving the city and the Ritualist kingdom to its ashes, where it faded with the wind. For decades in the ensuing power vacuum, remnants of the pirate coalition would battle with each other for control over the region, while the cinnamon cities ultimately secured their rule. By the late 11th century, the first of Adversaria's marine legions arrived in the pirate coast to secure safe trade of goods to Aeronoi, which would ultimately prevent any future pirate coalitions of that same size from forming. These legions would be forced to rotate constantly as the unforgiving environment and diseases of the region decimated their ranks. Today, 2 legions remain: Legio 95 Visuado's Wrath and Visuado's Heirs, a once connected legion that split during the Imperial Civil War after their legend Visuados was killed by soul-replicating blood magic, and the struggle for power caused bloody conflict within their ranks. Meanwhile, the cinnamon cities with aggressive investments, hefty loans, and bloody expansion would come to control the spice trade and amass a wealth unseen in the region before or since Ufaliracci. But their story is not a ritualist story, and so this is where we will leave them. Their time will soon come, or rather their time in the sun will soon fade, and they too will be forgotten. So ends our tale, though perhaps not forever, for if you, brave listener, feel up to it, then you can take up the Ritualist cause of old, reforge the old kingdom of Ufaliracci, and restore the Silver Palace to its former glory, although I think this costs like 5,000 gold in game, so that's a lot. But be warned, in all my hundreds of hours in CK3, I have seldom seen a start that is more unforgiving and merciless than this one. You will be attacked from all fronts in holy wars, lest you bend to a neighboring kingdom, whereupon your religious liberty and faith of your people will constantly be disputed by your overlord. It is a start that is not for the faint of heart, but should you succeed, you are poised to bring forth a glorious future for the Ritualist people for many generations to come. A people who desperately need a leader in this time of Wardenite rule. But that's it for this one. Thank you guys so much for watching. I want to thank that one guy from the Godherja dev team. They assisted me with writing the script and with getting information for it, and then were kind enough to review it for me, which I appreciate very much, so thank you. If you like this sort of content, make sure you like, comment, subscribe, as it lets me and YouTube know that you like this sort of content, you'd like to see more of it. I'm very happy with how this one turned out. I'm glad that we're sort of diversifying our content here as March kicks in. I'm trying to spread my my gaze, as it were, around the Godherja world so that you can get a little bit of a taste for basically the entirety of the world, rather than just what I assume a lot of people think about, which is Adversaria or the Selvoki or maybe the Marchers. I wanted to give you everything, so I'm just trying to branch out. If you have any area that you're really interested in, you can obviously let me know in the comments and I can add it to my queue. I want to thank our channel members, which we have 2 tiers of, who support the channel from the goodness of their own heart. I appreciate you guys so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for supporting the channel. If you'd like to support the channel, considering joining, you can do so from the Join tab. But again, that is it for me. I'm Sol. This has been Ufaliracci, Ritualist of the Pirate Coast, and I will happily see you in the next one.